Happy Wine Wednesday, everyone. I found myself a plastic wine glass that I painted with a seahorse a long time ago. It's not as elegant as the one Holly gave me that got broken, but I
Oh,
have an actual wine glass tonight.
Is
So
it
there's that.
unbreakable?
What? A non-breakable one. Yes, it's completely
Is it
plastic. It looks
unbreakable?
kind of what? No, right.
Well,
You
it's
can.
got lots of plastic that breaks.
Oh, well, I mean, I'm sure I could find a way, but for now, it's a safe alternative. But I'm still depressed. Happy Wine Wednesdays, then, Ginger. Still depressed that about Holly's glass, and I had a hand painted glass for me made years ago when I first got into seahorses. I still have pictures of all these glasses, but I no longer have the glasses. So anyhow, I do have a glass tonight, not drinking from carafes. That's good. I'm sipping on Chardonnay as usual. Let me know what you're sipping on in the comments. And tonight is open chat. I've talked to Chris Carey on the side, and he is pushing me, beat me up to get some work done on the website. So I am working on it, guys. But I literally am so busy I haven't had time to get a real wine glass. So just leaving that up in the air. But tonight is open chat, so bring forth your questions. I know we're getting closer to Miss Zen Ginger finally stepping into the seahorse world for real. Can't wait. Zen, you need to get with me on the side so that we can schedule the time that you're going to come in. And it doesn't have to be you're going to do it tomorrow. It could be you're doing it this month. But come in. I think that would be the absolute perfect Wine Wednesday, and I'd actually like to advertise it. That's why I'd like to get with you on the side and determine the date, because it'd be the perfect Wine Wednesday for newcomers to hear someone say, so what do you think about this? Why do you think that? And, instead of us trying to answer questions that are just in the comments that takes us a minute to process and etc., having you here would be just amazing. Or anyone out there new that's getting ready to set up for seahorses, contact me, because we like those kind of live streams. Nobody's going to make you feel bad for not knowing stuff. We all learn from our mistakes, right? And so we like the questions because we can share what happened to us, what we think would be most effective. We've got Ray and Cheryl, who have been doing this for a long time. We need to check on Cheryl, by the way. She's been
yeah, where's
busy, but
Cheryl?
we need to check on her. But we've got Ray and Cheryl that have been doing this forever. Dan steps in once in a while. Chris Carey steps in once in a while. So we've got people that have been taking care of seahorses forever. And then we've got Holly and I, who have more of a modern approach. We do things a little bit differently, but that's a good thing to hear the different ways people do things and what's worked. And so anytime we can get a newcomer in that will actually come into the stream and ask questions live, that's just so helpful, not only to the person, but to everyone who watches, right? So anybody who's interested in that, contact me or Holly or Ray. Not Ray. Ray won't respond to you. No, I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. He will.
He
Hey, I
will.
respond to people all the
No,
time.
I'm just
Yeah, he
kidding.
does.
I'm totally kidding. It was a joke.
Well, at least on the forums that I go to,
Yes.
or
Yes.
the groups that I go to.
Yes. You're
But
very
I've
active.
replied to people that on the Facebook's Whisper
Yeah,
page,
I would
and
yeah,
actually
he does.
I would
He was
actually back
helpful
up.
this morning. This morning, I saw something and tagged Ray, and he was right there to say something about it. So
I would actually back
he's
up and
there.
say, I would actually back up and say that Ray is much more responsive than even me because I'm the one that's not responding when I need to. So it really was
That's
a
why
joke.
I tagged Ray.
That's right.
yeah, but I'm 80 years old and looking for stuff to do.
Well, whatever the reason, I'm just saying, if you do contact me and I don't respond instantly, contact one of them. But back to the point. Hey,
Next month
Archie
I'll be
Reese.
81.
What, Ray?
Next month I'll be 81.
Jeez. Bravo,
Getting
man.
old.
Yeah. I mean, but that's awesome. Old and
Yeah,
awesome. I
it
love it.
is.
Lots of experience, and you're still kicking and, fighting the good fight. I love it. I do see you,
Ain't
I'm
Archie
your
still
Reese.
eating
birthday
tomatoes
is
off my tomato plants in the house.
And what'd
I
you say,
think you
Holly?
share a birthday with Dandy, my
Oh,
seahorse. I
that's right.
think I made his
The
birthday
20,
your birthday, March
the
1st.
28th.
Oh, the
No, 28th.
28th, real close. Yeah.
There-
Yeah,
Andy's
well, this
March
year it's an
1st. I
extra
knew
day
you
in
were
between.
close.
There's an extra day in between because this is a leap year.
Yep.
Ah, it is. Okay. Cool.
But so as I was saying, guys, anybody who ever wants to jump in, RG Reef, if you ever want to jump in, we love to hear about whatever's going on in the reefing community too. So we're just looking for new ideas for the stream. I'm working on the website, but today is another open chat. So anything you guys want to ask, you ask, or we'll just sit here and have a discussion with the community. But we're here to talk. And I know that many of you are very uncomfortable being on screen. You don't actually have to. So Marina used to join us from Australia, and she would be doing stuff as she was talking to us. And so I can absolutely show you how to be a part of the stream without showing your video, just your voice. So I totally get it. If anybody out there wants to come into the stream, but they're like, I don't want to be on camera, totally get it. We can work that out to where it's just your
You
voice
can
and
kill the camera
like
and
Holly's
be a
doing.
picture or a
Just click
symbol.
the disable camera button.
Yep.
Yeah.
And I know some people are even uncomfortable with that. Like, I don't want my
Mhm.
voice, whatever. But we need you. We
I,
need you,
I
and
was
we want to
probably
help
the
you.
same way,
Mhm.
but it grows on you.
Yeah, Ray, you were the
Mhm.
same way, but now you're here every week. So, right. And
Yeah.
once you realize that,
But the only problem is that she'd be another girl on here.
I know you're
I'm
kind of
kind of
outnumbered.
outnumbered all the time.
I know. We got to
I
get
need to get a night with Chris and Dan both on at the same time with me.
where
Mhm.
the girls are outnumbered. I understand. I hear you.
Well, at least even numbers, maybe.
Right, right.
Yeah.
And we are going to bring Robert King back. And of course, you guys, if you ever want anyone brought in as a guest, all you got to do is tell me. I'll reach out to them. But the other thing about coming live on this stream is it is smaller. So I get the uncomfortableness just in general, but it's not like Reef Dudes where 200,000 people are seeing you. It's like we have a community, it's smaller. I would love to grow it, of course. But in the meantime, you're just helping yourself and others. So we'll work it out. Nobody's mad if you don't do it, but I think that would be the perfect stream where, a newcomer asks, because I can sit here and say, well, when I first started,
Mhm.
I was wondering this, but it's not the same as someone saying, okay, I've got my
Yeah.
equipment. Here's how I'm setting it up. Do you think doing the power head this way is a bad idea? And then us all discussing it. That's
Mhm.
huge, because that's real, in my opinion. I see Salty Reef back. What up, Salty Reef? Oh, and Zen Ginger said, Ray, she's not ladylike, so don't worry.
Yeah.
But what's up with Salty? Want to hear from Salty? See what he's doing. It's been a minute since we heard from them. And right, Ray said, "Are you saying that Kelly and Holly act
Yeah.
ladylike?" We
Yeah.
really don't.
Cheers
Well,
to that.
there's
Right?
sometimes you just leave it open for me to say something.
Mm, you got to say it. I get it. I'm not offended. But yeah, so I literally don't even have a topic for tonight. So what do you guys want to discuss? Do you just want to share what's going on in tanks? What happened this morning that Ray helped with? Why don't you tell us that? Or should we not share that?
No, there's actually been a couple things on the Facebook page for
Okay.
Seahorse Whisper that would be kind of cool to discuss. One thing I've been watching this guy, he's raising babies right now, baby erectus, and he has an interesting setup going. He's had them a couple weeks now, and they're like inside of a round little tank inside of a 10-gallon,
Yep.
which I think is cool and kind of a good idea how he's doing it. It's a little different. And then, yeah, this morning there was a seahorse that had it. It looked like a big bubble or pimple like on his snout that I'd never seen something like that before. So that's why I tagged Ray.
Okay, Lynn, I see your question. We're going to answer it in just a second. But so, Holly, with the tank inside the tank, I've heard of this multiple times. but what
Mhm.
is the reasoning? Because when people ask, can I put the fry in a tank inside the adult tank? I always say
Mhm.
probably not a good idea. That's the whole point to removing them. But you're saying it's just a tank inside a tank and the parents aren't there, right?
Yeah, well, he runs high filtration on the outside part of the tank.
Oh, I love
And
that.
he feeds the and I think it condenses the food more.
Yep.
He's he's not keeping constant food in there, he says. He feeds them like several times a day.
But no, I
And
get
he
it. So
like
basically,
he has it all hooked to skimmers and I think things like outside of that tank. So they're protected inside this ball thing
so he can have
inside.
high pressure, high flow, but the fry aren't being slammed against the walls because they're in. I love that idea.
They're
I think that's really
Yeah,
smart.
it seems really cool, and I haven't really interacted with him much to find out more about it, but everything's on the Seahorse Whisper Facebook page, so you can look at it and see what's going on there.
I'm going to go there after the stream and see if he wants to maybe come into Wine Wednesday some week and share
Mhm.
what he's doing and why and how it works, because
Mhm.
that sounds really smart to me. I just think that would be a really good idea. That's like getting
Mhm.
extra filtration, extra flow without risking the fry. That sounds really smart. Um,
Mhm.
excuse me. And then what happened with the second one? The problem?
Oh, Lynn is the one that she's saying
Oh,
that's
okay.
her seahorse. The
Okay.
wart boy, she
All
said she
right.
calls it.
Okay, well, she originally asked, what are your thoughts about using Panicer in a seahorse tank to eliminate, control, um, digitate hydroids on live rock? And Ray, you said you haven't ever done it in a tank before?
Nope. Many years ago, maybe more than a decade, I used Panicure once for something in a hospital tank. I honestly can't even remember what it was for at that time.
So I've used Panicer, I say Panicer, Panicure, however you say it. I've used it for aptasia. Um, and that didn't work out very well, but I found out later I was using the wrong kind. And then I know of a seahorse breeder that used it constantly for seahorse fry. Let me ask why are we wanting to use Panicer in the tank? Like what's I see hydroids, but is it if they're adult seahorses, are the hydroids really bad? I mean, like why is that a thing? I mean, of course, you don't want hydroids in a seahorse tank, of course. But I just like if I had a gorgonian with a couple hydroids on it, I never really worried much. What are you guys' thoughts? Really serious? Should worry?
I I have not experienced hydroids since I had dwarfs many years ago.
Okay.
So I don't really have any comments on the subject because I've never had to deal with them other than that one time. I've heard they're not as dangerous for adults or they're not bad for the erectus adults,
Mm-hmm.
I guess. I don't know that much about them other than they're a big enemy of the dwarf seahorses, but I don't know beyond that.
Well, I was fortunate enough in 21 years to never have them in seahorse tanks, but before that, I did have a tank that I had them in. I forget whether it was a fish
I
only a tank
remember.
or a reef
I
tank,
rem
but
sorry.
they eventually they disappeared.
I remember now why, like I was trying to remember why my friend Tom Hornsby in the UK used to use hydroids on every fry tank. Like even before he saw hydroids, he just used it. So I'm thinking, why was that not a big deal to him? But I remember when I used it, I pulled the rock out of the tank. So I'm trying to remember why. I just looked it up and I remember now it's because of die off, right? So if you have a tank that has live rock, maybe coral, maybe gorgonians, whatever, any situation where you might have something besides hydroids, like bristleworms, like sensitive shrimp, like that kind of thing, the panicker will affect them. So the big fear is that if you dose it to a full live tank, then
Mhm.
you have die off, you have bristleworms in the rock that die, and you don't even know they're in there, and then ammonia and organics and craziness, right? So it really does depend. Like if you used dry rock and set up the tank, pristinely, and then you just happen to add a gorgonian that had hydroids, I personally would go ahead and try it in the tank and just be very, very careful. It's always a better option to use a hospital tank if you can, but you're talking about you have to treat the thing that's in the tank, I'm guessing. Like hydroids it depends on the hydroids you're talking about too, because I've seen the hydroids that are like at the bottom of a gorgonian growing on its stem, and then there are the hydroids that are on the glass in the different life stage. So what life stage are they in? Why are you trying to treat? And what do we mean by wart boy? I want to get to Cora Works'
And does
comment, but
Panitor hurt other things in the tank, like your corals and things? Like, what does it do to everybody else?
I don't think so. I feel like it's only to invertebrates. I'm going to look it up because I want to be sure before I say that.
I
Um,
remember Dan and I think Cheryl talking about it, but yeah, I've never
like
used it
if you're
for
talking
anything.
about, if you're
For
talking about,
parasite type thing. Is that the one that's the goat dewormer?
yes, yes. So
That's what
Well,
I
it
if
thought.
uses for horse deworming too.
Right.
Uh-huh.
So
Yeah.
it's mainly used for deworming, like they said. And I would not, if I had a full blown reef tank with coral and different inhabitants, and I mean like
Mhm.
a full blown mixed reef or such, I would not do it in the tank at all. I would pull the piece that had the hydroids. I would try to, because hydroids do have life stages, right? They come from most of them. I know there are different hydroids, but the ones I've dealt with are the ones that you see the little stems at the bottom and they're stingy little things. Then they'll sting you if you touch them. And then as the life cycle progresses, they I'm not scientific, guys, but they spout them out or something, and then you find the little things all over the glass that look like little stars or whatnot,
Yeah.
and whatever. So there's different life stages. So of course, just pulling the item wouldn't work
Mhm.
for every life stage. But if you
Mhm.
pulled the item and treated it outside of the tank, then the life stage, whatever was going on in the tank, would outlive itself. I don't know how to say that. I mean, they may
Mhm.
plant again and cause more chaos. I'm not really sure. And that's my answer because I'm going back and
Mhm.
forth as I'm talking, and I want to like check my resources and get back to you on that. But I do want to know what's the wart deal? Like why
Oh,
what
so if
happened?
you go on to our Facebook page, she posted a question about
Okay.
a picture of her seahorse. He's got a big thing on his snout.
And is this related to hydroids or no?
No,
Okay.
No.
That's what I needed to know. Okay. All right.
I
Well, I'm
don't
gonna
know
look.
what it is. It's had it for a few months, but
Okay.
she took the picture with blue light, which makes it very hard to diagnose anything. Well, it's hard even if you got a good picture to diagnose just out of a picture.
Mhm.
But
Right.
um, with what it looks like, it could be a gas bubble, or it could be an infection from
Oh,
bacteria.
okay. I'm
And
seeing it.
so what I'd suggest is the hospital tank
Okay.
with the water changes, and in time that may cure it, but it's going to take some time. It's not something that developed just overnight. Um, it was probably on the go many weeks before there was even anything visible to begin with.
So
Um,
this. Sorry. Go ahead. Finish.
so basically, if the water, if changing the water in the hospital tank frequently doesn't show some improvement over time, or if it shows signs of marginally getting worse, then I don't know what access she has to antibiotics. But if it's a gas bubble, then acetazolamide or Diamox, the brand name, would be the thing to try. But if you don't know for sure what it is, some of the antibacterial agents can be used along with the Diamox. So you could treat for both at that time if you find something appropriate. And
So
all the antibacterial, it has to be a gram negative or a broad spectrum. If it's a gram positive, it's not going to work.
It
gotcha.
looks like too, she's saying in a comment here, she's lost some other seahorses recently too.
Okay.
He says, if you look in the comments,
Mm-hmm.
I lost a 2-year-old female on Christmas Day, a male
Oh.
on New Year's Day. I'm trying to find out why.
Okay.
So
Well,
that kind of clues me in along what Ray's saying. It might be a bacterial issue going on from high organics in the tank, perhaps.
So wait, real quick. This actually interests me because now looking at the picture, and you can see the picture, anyone in Seahorse Whisperer group on Facebook, but it looks almost identical to the round knob thing on my female's tail. But here's the difference. My female, when I got her, had the round knob thing.
Mhm.
It's grown with her, so it didn't get bigger or smaller based on
Mhm.
anything other than her growing. And she never showed signs of having any other trouble, so I decided it was probably deformity. The thing that I think that this is not gas bubble is because you can see that it's filled with white. Okay. Usually when it's gas bubble, I've dealt with it myself. It literally
Mhm.
looks like air bubbles. Like they don't look full. Okay.
Mhm.
well,
In
unless
my
they get
experience.
infected.
Right. Unless they
If
get
they get
infected.
infected,
Right.
they go white too.
Right. Right. That's what I'm saying is in my experience, and there are occasions when this can happen. So my first question is the seahorse still eating? The seahorse with the problem, Wart Boy. Is he still eating? Is he acting funny in any way? And then, I mean, just right off the bat, the first thing I would do is clean everything, right? I mean, pull your skimmer and clean it, do a big water change. If you're using UV sterilizer, change the bulb, like clean everything. Check your sump, check your socks, because if this is a thing, and I'm so sorry you've lost a couple seahorses, if this is a thing and not just a one-off, then Ray's right. It's probably bacterial, and the first step to me is cleaning everything.
The
Would you guys
biggest
agree with
problem
that?
is it's overloaded biologically.
Okay,
There's 13 seahorses in a 75.
gotcha.
Oh, I didn't
Yeah,
realize the size of
So
the
that
tank.
takes, unless it's really extreme husbandry that's been going on with it, then it takes a while, but the dissolved organic level is going to eventually get up, which then means that the pathogen level is going to increase too. And
well,
the
and that's no,
ones
that's
with weakest immune systems are going to be the first ones affected.
sure. And I would say that's literally like there's no criticism here because that's happened to me. When I had a bunch of seahorses and I actually raised them to adults and my tanks were overcrowded and I had my 65-gallon and my mom passed away and I wasn't taking care of it like I should, they still were fine for years. And it was like they probably really shouldn't be because I'm not caring for them the way I should. And then they started to come down with problems. So this organics thing that Ray's talking about and the bacterial thing, the problem with it is you can't really pinpoint, oh, this happened and that's why
Mhm.
this is happening. Because it's literally just the buildup from all of them being in there in too small a space, into less and not enough water volume. It
Mhm.
just adds up and adds up. And even though you're doing water changes, it's adding up faster than your water changes. So again,
Mhm.
I would want to know more about do you have a sump on the system? I'm guessing you do, but what does your sump look like? what's your skimmer rated. You might want to upgrade your skimmer, get a better skimmer. And now that you're unfortunately, sadly, down a few seahorses, maybe up the water change. Like if you're doing 25%, do 50 or something like that. Because it is, you know, reef tank people talk about old tank syndrome. In the seahorse world, it's literally just the buildup has built up, right? I mean, there's no word for it.
And there's
It's
no test kit that can tell you that. And all the
right.
test kits that you do have can tell you everything is fine, but
Mhm.
everything can be fine and the dissolved organics can be increasing.
Right. So,
Mhm.
Ray, let me ask you this though, because I've thought about this a couple of times. If you realize that you're starting to have problems, there's no real clue why, and I literally just dealt with this in my own one, and I'll tell you guys what I did. But well, I'll tell you what I did. What I did was a super huge water change, like just wipe the slate clean, 90% kind of water change, and
Mhm.
then I figure, isn't that getting rid of a lot of the organics? I know that they can be like in the rock and, you know, all over, but by changing that much water, aren't you reducing that somewhat?
Yes,
Okay.
immensely. But
But you're still going to have the
the
same
thing is, if
problem.
you don't
Right.
change your protocols,
Right.
either it can be a combination of many things. The feeding protocols you have, the frequency of your cleaning out the filter pads, the size of your water changes. There's so many things that are all intertwined there, and usually it's best to look at a few protocols at least to change, not just one, because one may not be sufficient.
So in this particular case, she's got a seahorse that has something going on it now. I didn't see if she responded. Oh, sorry, I'm missing comments. All right, so I'm just is the seahorse still eating regularly and acting fine? And if so, if the seahorse is acting fine and just has this thing, instant reaction to be hospitalized, or like my advice personally would be to do a massive water change,
Mhm.
ramp up your sump, change your
I'd
socks
do
or any
that, don't put
floss.
it in the hospital tank.
You would? Okay.
Yeah,
See,
because
Holly
you
and
want
I,
something better. Like doing a massive water change may make things better, but it's not going to get it to the point where you're going to induce a
healing.
healing. Uh, whereas if you put it in a hospital tank and you're changing 50% of the water every day or every other day, then that cleanliness factor there is going to be consistent. You can do a big water change, 90% even on the display tank, but unless you're going to keep doing that, then that
Mhm.
um, the dissolved organics are again going to start building up.
Mhm.
Um, so it's a case
Right,
of
but what I'm trying to say is if she took a look at her sump or contacted one of us on the side and we talked about maybe upgrade the skimmer, make change the socks more, did a big water change to reset the balance, and then maintained larger water change, not every day, but like did 50% instead of 25 or whatever for a while. I've seen
and
clean
then
fresh
move the
water.
seahorse from the hospital tank after it's healed back into the display.
Well, see, with me, I've seen seahorses heal from just that, just cleaner water, period. And if you're not going to use antibiotics, well, I'll ask Holly if you want to talk about it. You don't have to, not particulars, but I just know Holly and I have talked lately. Like for instance, in my case, I lost a seahorse. I know the tank was overstocked. Okay, so I'm literally right there with you. There's no judgment because it just happened to me. My tank was overstocked. I kept meaning to separate them. I did it done in time. I lost him. He stopped. He started eating kind of funny. I didn't even realize it. Apparently, I told you guys because Holly was like, "You told us last week he was kind of funny about eating."
Well, I
I
think
didn't
you
even
told
realize it.
me.
Well,
I
yeah.
don't think you said it on here. I think you told me like
Well, my
afterward.
point is, I didn't even think that it was such a big deal that I started to worry. And then, like that, he was gone. And so then I became super observant. I did a huge, massive water change, cleaned all the pads, cleaned all the filters, pulled the pumps, cleaned the pumps out, did every cleaning thing I could think of. And then I was like, Ray would tell me to hospitalize, right? Somebody, and in this case, I was just like, I'm going to be more observant. I'm going to pay attention to see if anybody's eating funny or whatever. I'm going to be more aggressive in my water changes. But I just felt like since no one else had symptoms at that time, hospitalization would be a negative. And Holly, can you talk about how maybe sometimes hospitalizing a seahorse makes more stress for them?
I've had seahorses that wouldn't eat in the hospital,
Right.
that would eat in a tank. Now, the thing about the hospital that I like about it is it's a small volume of water.
Right.
So it's easier to keep it clean. It's easier to do. You can do a 10-gallon tank, 100% water change every day, and it's not as big a deal as doing your whole big tank.
No, no. Hey, I want to
But they're
interrupt you real
not
quick. Wait, hang on, hang
necessarily
on.
comfortable in that. And so the stress, I think, to me, sometimes it can be a toss up, like you were saying, because I've seen seahorses improve by going home where they were more comfortable as opposed to being in the hospital tank and feeling depressed and not
Well, I'm
wanting.
just glad I'm
So,
glad you brought this up because that's a major difference. So, Lynn, I'm absolutely not telling you not to hospitalize this seahorse. That's not what I'm saying. I don't want to sound like I'm saying that. My all-in-one tank is literally 40 gallons. Okay. So doing a massive 90% water change is a lot different than if you have a 75-gallon tank
right,
with a sump,
exactly.
and that's a lot more water. So in your case, it might be really smart to pull that seahorse, hospitalize him, make sure and I mean, if you want to, we can discuss a hospital tank, just about,
Hmm.
giving him something to hitch on so he's comfortable, making sure you don't leave uneaten food because there's no filtration usually in a hospital tank, or not good enough filtration and stuff like that. But in your case, it may be very beneficial. And there is always the worry that whatever's going on with that seahorse will then pass to another seahorse, right? That's how
Hmm.
bacterial infections work. By the way, I wanted to say, Cora works in Zen Ginger. You are not in trouble for talking about other stuff in the chat. I'm just mad that I can't keep up with your conversation. But please feel free to talk about whatever you want in the chat. There's no, we ain't mad, is my point. But, anyways, what else would you guys add to this in Lynn's case?
So it looks like, first of all, so she's commenting more. Maybe share
Yep.
her comments. I know he is still eating, she says, but here's her latest comment on the equipment and what she's doing in
So
the
she's
tank.
reducing the temp from 74.5 to 73.5. I think that's a great idea. My
Mhm.
seahorse tanks literally sit at like 69.
I run mine
It
68,
doesn't
69 too.
So I don't, it doesn't induce breeding. Obviously, I don't have fry that I want. But
Mhm.
when you reach that 74 mark, it's not like you can't keep seahorses at 75 degrees. You can. But then those bacterial things
Mhm.
become more prevalent. They grow, bacteria grows faster in the warmer
They
water.
expand
So if there's going to
exponentially,
be a
not
problem,
linearly. They expand on an exponential basis. So with each rising degree, that curve gets really drastic at that 74 point. The
mm,
upward curve gets really drastic there.
Mhm.
And that's one of the reasons why in the hospital tank, we like to get the temperature down to 68, because at 68, the bacterial level is very minimal compared to 73 or 74 even.
right. And so I would say too, I read that you're overfeeding and over mother them. Stop it. It ain't gonna work. I've got kids and seahorses, and I know, I get it. I truly freaking understand. No judgment.
Mhm.
However, when you back up and stop, then you stop having as many problems. I promise. So
Mhm.
if you just feel like, oh, they came to the tank and they look hungry, I'm gonna feed them. Don't do it. I'm sorry, I'm not Ray. I'm not throwing food. I shouldn't say I'm not Ray. Ray is strict in a 4 times feeding regimen. But I'm just saying, like, don't overfeed. Get them on a schedule. Tough love sometimes works. Make them eat on your schedule and don't leave extra food in the tank. I've had many times where I put food in the tank. I know how much those guys eat. And then it's all gone and they're looking at me and they're swimming at the glass like, we
Mhm.
want more. And every time I put more in, because I cave, they don't eat it. It just
They
becomes
don't eat it
weight.
all.
No,
They pick
nope.
at it. Yeah.
So I would absolutely say I totally get it, but back up from it. Stop mothering. Don't overfeed because that's your problem, probably. We've all had it, we've all done it, but we talk so much about you don't want to not feed your seahorses enough because they need food, a lot of food, a lot more food because their systems and da da da. But overfeeding can become a problem too. Absolutely. Ray, you look like you want to say something.
Any food that they're taking up after 10 or 12 minutes is going to mean that that food will push the existing food in their digestive tract out sooner than normal, so that their already inefficient digestive system is removing even less nutrient from that food.
Mhm.
Excuse me. So while you can make up for that extra nutrient by pushing more food through it, and they keep on processing till they have enough nutrient for themselves, you're putting more nutrient laden feces out into the water, which
Poof.
changes your dissolved organic situation in the tank in the water.
So you're literally stepping on your own foot. I mean, you're literally like just it's pointless. Like
Yep.
you're feeding them more when the food that they got didn't have time to digest, which would have been enough. And when you feed them more, they end up with the digest or the minerals they need, nutrients they need, but they poop so much more that it's just a bunch of poop water then basically. Right? Easy way of saying it.
Yep.
Ray's like, no, that's not what I said, Kelly. But okay, sure, if that's the way you want to recap it. I'm not scientific, y'all.
We should
Anyways,
tell Lynn also that I'm an old man. I'm pretty set in my ways, and it doesn't mean that you have to do things my way. Um, the things that I recommend are based on my 20 years of experience with it, and I know that other ways do work. I just I can't find myself recommending them because
you
it's just
shouldn't.
not.
Mhm.
You shouldn't. You should stick to what's worked for you. And so, Ray, I mean, because all of us, it's really hard to say, this is what happened to me. I only have what, 8, 10 years experience? You've got 20. I don't even have 8, 10. What, like I don't even know. I don't have nearly as much experience. My point being, I can tell you what happened to me and what worked and what I would do, but then there's someone with 20 years experience.
Mhm.
You should probably listen to them. I'm just being real, right?
Mhm.
Well,
And
it's
and
not that
everything
your
might
experience
work.
is not just as valuable because I've learned
Right.
from people that started well after me.
Sure.
So it's what you take in the whole time, and uh, the personal experiences that you have too, because you can have experiences that I've never ever experienced.
Like Panicker, which I will get back to you on, Lynn. I absolutely promise. I'm gonna look at my notes right after we get offline. I have tons of notes and tons of articles about all of this stuff. It's just trying to think of it while we're here and I'm drinking wine doesn't usually work out. But I want to give you a full and
I also
valid
wanted
answer.
to
So,
know what happened with the previous deaths back around Christmas time, but
right.
that's something she's never going to know. And quite often, when we have deaths, even now, we don't know what actually caused them. What
Right.
we do know is the most likely thing is pathogenic, and that's going to be related to the dissolved organics that increase and allow the pathogens to grow, whether it's bacterial, or whether it's oh, yeah, what do you call the ones that infect the
Parasites?
gills? Yeah, the parasites in the gills or
Yeah,
uh, internal parasites. Like you're not going to know exactly what it is. Just know that when a death happens, usually it's because of some pathogen, whether we can see it or not, doesn't
right,
matter. It's the fact that it's happening. And while, like humans, maybe some of our losses occasionally might be just that was a natural thing for that particular one. They weren't going to live any longer.
right,
That's that's not the norm. Most of them, they're
right,
going to be dying because of some pathogen.
right. And and
So,
and like I said, my seahorses lived in my 65 gallon that I let get covered. I mean, and I say it went to shit, but it's because it got covered in nuisance algae. But then again, algae's also filtering the water, right? So
right.
it was kind of helping me, even though I didn't realize it was helping me because it looked awful, but it was still better than if I had some serene tank where I just let things go. Anyways, back to the point. So Ray, in this, oh, actually, before I ask you about the specific advice you would give, can you just really quickly talk about, we say constantly, dissolved organics. That's the problem in seahorse tanks. It's dissolved organics, and you can't test for it. You can't see it. It's just a thing, and you don't want it. Can you talk about what leads to high dissolved organics? Like what?
Well, anything that decays is going to produce organics. And you have organic solids, you have the dissolved organics. And by dissolved, there's you can't see them there, but things like carbon can remove them from the water. But most of us use skimmers, and skimmers will remove most types of dissolved organics. And it's a case of they have an affinity for the bubbles. So when the bubbles are produced in the skimmer, these organics are drawn to the surface of the bubbles. Um, when the bubbles pop in the collector, then that releases the organics, and now you can see it. They're no longer dissolved in the water anymore. Now, we don't know 100% for sure that the dissolved organics are the actual um, problem causing this increase in pathogenic action, but we do know that it's synonymous with increase in dissolved organics, and that you don't seem to have the problem with this pathogen outbreak if the dissolved organics aren't going up. Unfortunately, to find out what our dissolved organic level is, we have to send samples out to a lab to have them tested, and it takes quite a while before you get a result back, and it's expensive. So the end result, by the time you get the results, it's too late to solve the problem. So
Right.
basically, we end up having to be proactive rather than reactive. In other
But
words, if you see anything happen negatively in the tank, it's safer to assume that your water quality is at fault, even though your test kits may say everything's fine. Assume that water quality is at fault and assess what you're doing, and maybe uh, clean out your filter pads more often, do larger, more frequent water changes. Don't feed as much at a time, but more often. Like there's so many things there that are going to affect us. And so set that new protocol. And then if you no longer have the problem, then everything's great. But anytime that you do have a problem, you're going to have to assume that it's because of this dissolved organic starting to build up and causing the pathogens to increase. Um,
so what I was asking to begin with, that was great, Ray. You told him I'm literally messing with this because this live is cutting me off. I don't like the image, so I'm trying to fix it because I feel like my face is hiding behind the live. But Ray, what I was asking was, what do dissolved organics include? Meaning, are we talking seahorse poo? Are we talking?
Well, it's in your feces. It's in
Okay.
food. As the food decays, the different nutrients released, and that includes the organics. The feces, especially coming from seahorses or certain other fish like tangs that don't have a stomach and don't have a proper digestive tract. Anything like this, that nutrient laden feces is going to give you more nutrients and dissolved organics released as it decays. And the biggest single thing you can do to limit that is to have a way to remove this stuff before it rots. Well, it's pretty hard to sit and clean your filter pads every single day, but if you do it at least twice a week, then that is a pretty good head start to eliminating problems there. And if you couple that with the larger water changes, more frequent water changes, um, I see quite often people talking about a 10% water change every week. Well, most
That's
systems
not
for
enough.
seahorses, that's going to be insufficient.
Mm.
Uh, but if you've got a lot of equipment and you're feeding on the sly side, you're um, basically, how do I say this? Yeah, this cognitive impairment, I get to lose track here. But
Well,
basically,
no, I get what you're saying. You're saying if you're
Mhm.
using equipment and other means to make
yeah,
up for your maintenance, then that could
that's
work.
possible. But most of us don't have that
But it
amount
has
of
to be
equipment.
working. Yeah.
So
Right.
you're going to need larger, and also stocking density comes into play. If you've got 4 and a 75, then that's one thing. If you got the 13 and a 75, boy, that's another story altogether.
Right. And she's
Mhm.
overfeeding. And that's what I was pointing out. Again,
Yeah,
no judgment. There's no judgment here because I've done it. I've
we
had
all have.
problems. Right. So I'm just saying, though, to learn from it, maybe stick to the 2 per 30 gallon. You can do more as you get higher in volume, water volume meaning, and 75 gallon with a sump, you've got a different situation there. You can keep more, but when you keep more, you can't overfeed. That's a big no-no, as Ray was just discussing. It's their food, it's their poop, it's everything that's swirling
My
around in the water.
experience has been with the filtration for seahorses is that you always need more than you think you need. When it comes to water changes, filtration equipment, everything, they remind me of like goldfish on the freshwater side. Goldfish are known, to be very messy fish, like other fish can't live with them. Well, the seahorses can't live with themselves. Being dirty. They're very dirty as
Well,
far as the way they eat, like race. It's the high organics, and they just are that way. I mean, I have two tanks now. In my 75 gallon, there's only four seahorses in there now. But I'm running a skimmer designed for a 240 gallon tank. I'm changing out a third of the water every week. I change out filter socks and wash out the skimmer cup every single day. And things are going good for them, right now. Everything's running fine. Everybody seems really healthy. But when I started, I didn't have as big of filtration equipment and systems when I first started with the seahorses, and I just kind of learned kind of through my own failures, you could say, along the way. They really need a lot when it comes to keeping their water clean, and you can't test for what's wrong, like Ray says. So you have to assume
you
that
just have to keep
organics
it simple.
run
Because let's
high
not
and
let's
have a
let
way to
let
take care of that,
but
have a way to deal with it.
let's not scare Zen Ginger off when she's on the cusp here. It's not that hard. It's
Well,
really
not
not.
scare, it's just realization. It
I know. I get
it
what I get your
needs a lot
point.
of filtration.
I get your point, and it's a good one. And all I'm saying is that's why Wine Wednesday with Zen in here asking questions would be really amazing, or someone new if it's not Zen, because then we could talk about, hey, if you set up properly for seahorses, if you don't learn from mistakes, as you and I both did, Holly, me too. But if you have the advice of these people that have been keeping seahorses for a long time, and you go ahead and get that ridiculously oversized skimmer, even though you're like, why am I doing this? And then you realize I never have any problems because I set up right. Like
Yes.
Holly and I, maybe others had set up not right, right? And we had to learn through. And so, what I want you guys to do is be able to learn from our mistakes and do things right to begin with, and spread the word that seahorses aren't hard to keep. They really aren't. I know everything we've just said makes it sound like they are, but it's really just setting up properly, having adequate filtration, knowing that they need more, like Holly said, like they're more like goldfish. They need more filtration than the average. But if you do that, you won't have the problems. And you still have problems, right? And Lynn, in your case, she said she always, she's a clean freak. She's constantly scooping up. I can't follow the conversation. Sorry. She's constantly getting poop out with the baster and such. Absolutely, I hear you. I think really in your case, and I'm just hearing this live now, so I haven't really looked into it. I don't know your full setup, but I think your case is very similar to mine, where we just overstock the tank, right? Like we just put too many seahorses in, and therefore we can't contain the amount of organics that they produce, if that makes sense. I think you're going to have an easier time. I'm so sad that you lost seahorses. I really am. But I think you're going to see an easier time now that you have fewer. I would not replace them. Absolutely do not replace them, at least not right away. You should look more at stocking density. And also, whenever you have a crisis, listen, I'm right there with you all. When I lost my Barbori, I was like on the phone, Dan, I got to have Barbori. I need two more. And he was like, wait a minute, hold up. Let's make sure we fix the tank first, right? So anytime you do lose a seahorse, the worst thing you can do is add more. And I literally made the mistake last week of saying, I lost the seahorse around Christmas. It was so sad. Blah, blah, blah. I'm observing my seahorses to see if there's any more problems. But then I made the comment, and I'm going to get more seahorses and break them off into different tanks and this, that, and the other. Well, I do mean that I'll be breaking them off into different tanks. I absolutely will not add more seahorses to that tank right now because it was overstocked to begin with, right? And yeah, so that's going to be like a problem in the making. And I know it's so cool to see a bunch of seahorses in a tank, but you got to figure, unless you have a ridiculously massive sump to compensate, you got to kind of stick to the rule. So I would say, and that's my final question about that. And then I want to go look at what Zen and Coro were talking about. But Ray, what's your final opinion? Do you think that she should hospitalize the wart seahorse?
Yes, I still think that.
Okay.
I'm always that way. I would rather hospitalize rather than not hospitalize and take the chance that, well, maybe it was at a borderline at
Right.
that point, and maybe it's the point of no return. And if I keep it in the display tank, it's going to go too far, and it's impossible to heal. It's something I don't know, and I'd rather err on the safe side. I may lose the seahorse anyway, but the thing is, I I probably have a better chance of losing it if I keep it in the display tank.
Gotcha. So hospitalize,
Hospitalized, upgrade the
do massive
protocols
water
for the
changes,
display.
and
Yeah,
give the seahorse a hitch. Make sure it's clean water constantly. And at this point, just observe, right? Don't medicate.
yeah.
Okay.
That's right.
No, I think I agree with that in this circumstance. I really do. Um,
And for the display tank, you have to look after improving things there.
yep. Massive water change. Look at your filtration, which, like I said, I feel like she's going to have a better time now that it is stocked more
Yeah.
correctly.
It's still wise to upgrade the protocol anyway,
Sure, sure.
just to be on the safe side.
No, I agree. I agree. And I think that's
The
good.
seahorses that he's already lost are the ones that had the weakest immune systems.
Yep.
But that doesn't mean that the others aren't going to get that way.
Right. Absolutely. Well, I think that that's a pretty good starting point for you, Lynn. I hope. And again, I'm going through the same stuff. I get it. Um, we want to have beautiful tanks, right? But sometimes we just overdo it. It just happens.
And you can always ask any more questions on the Facebook page that
Yeah.
she already posted on. And if I don't see it, then Holly will see it and she can let me
I
know.
can tag Ray and say, "Hey, Ray, what do you think?"
Yep. And Lynn, reach out. I mean, if you're willing to come in here and talk with us live, this doesn't just help you, which we want to do. We want to help you. But it's also this community thing where, the more that these questions get answered, the more that someone down the line will see this and, be like, oh, if we figure out how to resolve a problem, then someone down the line is like, oh, and can figure out the problem. So we love having
And
people come
maybe
in and
2 or
share.
3 years from now, somebody is replaying this video and they see your problems, Lynn, and see the advice that is given for it, and they can react to it at that time.
Yep. I need to do better at doing tags so people can find specific videos, but especially if someone comes in as a guest, then that is easy to find. You can search it. So if you ever want to come in as a guest and talk about a specific problem or a specific topic, then that helps it makes it easier for people to find instead of having to watch them all, because sometimes we tend to ramble. Um, Zen Ginger said too, I've wanted seahorses since I found out you could keep them in home aquariums 15 to 20 years ago, but everyone said they were so hard that you gave up until a few years ago. You're still so nervous. Right. But that's why we do this. And I know a lot of times we end up talking about a problem, right? And we're trying to resolve someone else's problem or our problems. But 90% of the time, it's just amazing keeping seahorses. Like, it's not a problem if you
it's
set up right and you feed them right and you
mhm.
clean up right. They're just
it's
amazing.
it's just that we've learned so much more about them.
Right.
And I think many years ago, because I mean, I have books about keeping seahorses. I've shared on here actually. I have books dated back all the way to the 60s, like
Right.
early 60s, about keeping seahorses. But people didn't, the reason they were so hard was because people didn't really know what they required. And as we learn, it's not that they're hard to keep, it's that they require things that we didn't understand back in the day that they needed. And now as we find out and we supply them with those things like good filtration, and keep their water quality good, we're seeing better success than people did back in those days because they
Right.
didn't know.
Right. And
And
I
maybe
don't.
someday we'll figure out the organics thing.
Yes,
You
exactly.
know?
And I was going to say too, I don't always have the answer, or I can't always give you the answer from the people in the show, but I do go back and try to figure it out. And I do come back and try to give you the answer. So, tell people to come to Wine Wednesday. What we
Mhm.
want is more people to come to this so that we have more experiences, more educated people that have done this for years to share their opinions and help each other. That's what a community is about, right? So yeah, but you're in a good one, Zen, and we're going to support you and we're going to make sure you have a great experience with seahorses. I shouldn't say that, right? Now it's like on me, but I'm sure it'll be great either way.
All these newcomers, they can do all their learning, and then when I kick off a few years down the road, then
Oh,
they can replace me.
Yep.
and I've said I
That's
don't want to hear that,
how it
Ray, because
goes.
I
That's
hope
how
you're
it
here
goes.
for a lot.
Hey, it's part of life.
I know. I hope you're
Yeah.
here for a lot longer, but the same is true for me. We're all seahorse whisperers, right? This whole community. But I'm gonna need someone to replace me someday too. So, we need some people to get really involved with seahorses, keep them, learn from them, gain their own experiences and knowledge and advice and share. That's why I'm gonna go in the group as soon as we're done with the live and look at the guy who's doing the tank and tank thing for the fry. I love that.
Yeah.
And he might be the next one. You never know. Or at least share his good experiences. So
Yeah.
anyways, I just love this community is all I was trying to say.
Mhm.
And but for tonight, I think we are going to call it. Um, we're a little early tonight, but the kids just walked in. So unless if
Uh,
somebody has something else.
yeah. So Lynn's saying, oh, her seahorses are babies she raised
Oh,
from her babies, so it's hard for her to let them go. I know that feeling too. All mine are ones I raised too. Other than I only have one seahorse left that I didn't raise.
mm.
And yeah, all the other ones I raised from babies. And yeah, it's hard. You worry what's going to happen to them in their new home. Or I know that feeling
Or if
when
you just
you.
if you just lose them, period, that's even harder. It's more of a personal
Mhm,
hit because they're your
mhm.
babies. I get it.
Yeah.
Ray, did you ever feel that way, or seahorses are just seahorses?
Uh, well, for me, the only way I took them to the fish store was by having them pre-ordered. They would tell their customers they can get them the seahorses. They would call me up, and I would take them in so that they never got into the fish store system.
Mhm.
And I used to have a page of seahorse facts that the store had to give them in
Mhm.
order to give them the best chance of survival uh, for what knowledge we had at that time. Of course, I updated as the years went on, but it was critical to me. If the store didn't want to abide by those regulations, then I wouldn't have anything to do with them. So it ended up being basically one store out of the 4 or 5 saltwater stores here in the city that would agree to things. So that was the only one that got the seahorses.
Sorry, I was trying to type and it's telling me to log in. I'm like, I'm sitting here, I'm logged in.
Oh.
I'll just say it live. Lynn, I was just gonna say if you ever want to join us live, we'd love to hear about your experiences and we'd love for you to share. I mean, that'd be really cool. We love when people come in and share what's going on with them. So if you're ever interested, let me know. But yeah, with pet stores,
You had to be doing something right to rear up fry.
that's
Yeah,
right. That's right.
absolutely.
That's it.
Mhm.
Right there.
Absolutely.
It took me my first batch, I think I kept one alive. One. Little
Mhm.
Cheryl. And it wasn't named after the Cheryl you guys see here. It was named after a different Cheryl, but she was a very strong woman. Only seahorse I kept alive for my first batch. I got better at it, but then, life kind of took me
Mhm.
down a notch. But yeah,
Mhm.
it says a lot that you were able to raise fry. That's amazing.
Yeah.
Did so
She wants to know about mackerel.
have had some. What is she asking? Okay,
She's talking
sorry.
about
Any advice?
macro.
Any
Yeah.
advice on refugium macroalgae? Are there ones that are more safe than others or ones that are not or more no-nos? I was terribly interested before, but I've seen some neat I wasn't terribly interested before, but I've seen some neat ones on Alyssa's. So I don't know what's on Alyssa's website. I haven't gone there lately, but she is very good at communication. So, first of all, I would say reach out to her and ask her because I know she's expanded into reef,
Mhm.
stuff. So I would reach out to her and ask her which ones are good for seahorse tanks. With the refugium type thing, it really seriously depends on what you're trying to do. So there are specific macros that I would advise for a refugium. I don't know that a refugium would be, well, it would still be good. Sorry, I'm thinking in my train of thought. So there, with refugium algae and like an algae scrubber, things like that. Refugium algae can be any of the nuisance algae that you don't want in a tank, but you can stuff in a refugium to filter the water, right?
Mhm.
So
And then just harvest it out as it
you have to
grows.
make sure to
Or ma-
harvest it. Yeah, I have
Yeah.
a whole video on that for sure. But
My freshwater tank is going through that. I have this moss, and it was funny. You met my friend Diana, in our
yeah,
party. She does freshwater tanks. So she was looking at my freshwater tank, and I have a moss in there that she wants
yeah,
that I consider
absolutely.
a nuisance. I pull that stuff
Right.
out of there and get rid of it all the time, and she wants some. And I'm like, oh,
Sure,
to
take
me, it's
it.
a weed. Yeah,
Yeah.
but
Well, no, and that's the key. Is it? I know that your question was about refugium macroalgae. So refugium macroalgae, um, any of the nuisance algae will work. I have algae scrubbers. I hate to say Caulerpa because I absolutely do not advise Caulerpa for a tank, but in a refugium, that's a good option. You do have to be careful. I've had a case even in my reef tank where if you're not maintaining that refugium, the stuff ends up in the tank and overtakes it. You don't want that. But if you want to get with me on the side, or I can try to prepare a list like for next week that goes through, I've been meaning to do this anyways, because there are specific names of algae that I would absolutely recommend for tank and for refugium. So I can give you, I will do this by next week. But if there's anything in particular that you're thinking of, like this looks cool, what does this do? Where would you put it? I can
I
absolutely
can
answer
tell
that.
you don't do the red, was it Ogu or something in your
Right, right.
because I did that years ago and I didn't like it. It got everywhere. It blew around and it was ugly. That would be a good one in the refugium, I think.
Absolutely. And I've done in my 65 gallon, I even put really not advised macros like the pink cotton candy. I can't remember the technical name.
Mhm,
Anyways, it was, as Holly said, a disaster, but I wanted it everywhere. Like it was a
mhm.
macro tank, so it was cool. It does depend on what you want, but I have specifics for, and I'm not going to be able to pull them out of my head right now. Just like Ray always says, we're getting old. But um, like the elephant ear or the blue scroll, sorry, blue scroll, I would never put that in a refugium, right? It doesn't make sense. It's a slower grower. It's beautiful in a tank, but I would never put it in a refugium. Things like, I'm not going to pronounce it right, but the red, I'll just say the common name. The red grape algae is really pretty in both a tank or a sump. You have to know it grows fast though. So, you have to be harvesting or it will take over. I liked the weird macros. I loved Neomeris. Um, I loved some of the things that like reef keepers would be like, no.
Don't
I
put that.
loved them because I wanted them to cover the tank and become this beautiful tank. You guys have seen my
Mhm,
macro tank. I loved those things. Um,
mhm.
so yeah, I'm gonna take that question with me, and I'm gonna come back and first thing next week, Holly, don't let me forget. We're gonna talk macros, and I'm gonna have some scientific names. I'll look all proper and smart, and I'll tell you because I have a whole article about it. I just don't
Mhm,
remember the names on the spot. But there are
mhm,
certain ones that I would put in either or,
mhm.
and I think the question was safe than others. It depends on what you mean by safe, right? Because again, Caulerpa, I don't use it in my tanks anymore because it's like illegal in California, I think.
Yeah, we can't have Callirpa here. But I mean, safe is relative because algae is safe. We just don't like it because it's ugly, but it's but so it's like, well, what do you mean by safe? Is it going to make the tank ugly? Well, then yeah, you don't want it.
Yes,
Or you
right.
know
That's
what I'm
it.
saying?
That's it. I told you guys when I let my 65-gallon tank go, the seahorses were fine. I
Yeah,
just
but
couldn't
this
see
tank
them.
was
I
yeah.
couldn't see them anymore because it was green everywhere, hair
Mhm,
algae, grossness, nastiness, like
mhm.
ugh. But the seahorses were fine because the algae was literally doing its job and
Yeah.
filtering the water, and everything
Mhm.
was fine for them. Did I want that tank? Did I like looking at it? No. So it depends on what you mean by safe, like Holly said. But they're like Callirpas are really notorious for. Um, I had a lionfish tank where I had Callirpa in the tank, and it grew under a rock and killed itself. Literally, like, what's wrong with you, algae? Are you stupid? But it grew under a rock, killed itself, and then that die off created a big cloudy mess that the lionfish couldn't breathe in, and I
Mhm.
ended up doing the wrong things and losing the lionfish. I don't think that would probably happen in a seahorse tank, but I would stay away from Callirpas. Anyways, I'm rambling. Sorry. I will get you some specifics on macros by next week. I'll come prepared with some names that I would advise for refugium and for tank. How's that sound?
I think your advice on contacting Alyssa was pretty good
Yeah.
too, because if she's going to buy from Alyssa, then Alyssa will know the particular ones that she is selling that are going to be of some help to her.
Yeah.
And I
And
say
she
that
has
about,
specific listings for seahorse like tanks. Like this
yes.
goes well with seahorses. She's good about that.
Well, but is she talking about the tank or the refugium? Because that does make a
Mhm.
difference, a huge difference.
Yeah.
Yeah, because the refugium doesn't have as much light.
Well, unless you light your refugium, right? Like my refugium had a specific light to grow the
Yeah.
algae. So, I
Yeah.
mean,
It's
it does
almost
depend.
like doing a whole nother mini tank
It
to
is,
me.
and it's amazing, and you get so many
Mhm.
cool critters. Oh my gosh, I love refugiums. I love
Mhm.
macro tanks, but
Mhm.
I'll look at Alyssa's website and have some opinions when I come back next week, and I'll come up with my own list of what I think. But Ray's right, and I say that about seahorses too. We've talked about different topics tonight, but one of the things that I can absolutely say without doubt is that captive breeding is the biggest and strongest and most important thing that has caused us to be able to keep seahorses healthily in our aquariums is captive breeding, right? So buying
Mhm.
captive bred seahorses is important, sorry. And when you have a problem, contacting the person you bought from is serious because they can tell you more about the specific regimen that the seahorse was under or give you advice that you
Mhm.
might not get elsewhere. Um, so I like that, Ray. I agree with it. But I'll come back to you next week, Zen. And Lynn, absolutely contact me on the side if you want. But for tonight, guys, I'm sorry. I don't mean to keep closing it, but I got
You
so
gotta
much shit to
go.
do. I know.
Yeah.
Anything else for tonight?
Nope.
All right. Don't forget if you want specific guests or you want to be a guest, we're right here. We're a community. We're ready for you. Appreciate everybody that came tonight, and let's see you next week. Say, Happy Wine Wednesday.
I know